Hello YouTube and welcome back to Kind Heart Homestead. My name is Ben and I'm here in our solar shed site, which is obviously unfinished. I've successfully passed the framing inspection and now I'm in the preliminary phases of electrical and plumbing rough-in. If you watched the last video, you know that I got the breaker panel installed just on the other side of this sheathing, which is still inside the building. That's the utility room. But the goal is to have all of my solar and well components in there so that everything is a lot easier to wire, and so that if anyone who's visiting this room gets curious, they won't be able to actually access the utility room because it has a separate entrance and a separate key. And that way, people who come and go to hang out on our farm, maybe do some sort of workshops in the future, some gardening tutorials, whatever, they can come in here, wash up, use the shower, use the laundry without any risk of being shocked by our high voltage batteries. So what I'm doing here is roughing in the electrical and the plumbing for the laundry section. This is going to be the part of the room that houses the washer and dryer and the utility sink. So basically about 2 feet from that wall to here is a gap. But where I'm standing is going to be the washing machine, the dryer, and then a utility sink right here. So this is just going to be a standard 120 volt receptacle. It has to be GFCI protected for the purposes of laundry use. But then here, this double box, this can have one of those big dryer plugs. That's a 240 volt, I believe it's a 30 amp situation. But let me show you what I got. According to my research, 10-3 is the proper conductor for a dryer. The 3, because there's actually 3 conductors plus a ground, and that's important because a lot of 240 volt appliances have 2 hots and a ground. The dryer, for some reason, uses 2 hots, a neutral, and a ground. So this has 3 conductors. That second number stands for the amount of conductors. It doesn't count the ground. There should always be a ground. And I calculated that I only need 11 feet minimum to get from here through the wall, up there, around, and then the scrap dangling down towards the bottom of the panel, just because I don't know which breakers are going to be at the top, which ones are going to be at the bottom. So I want to make sure everything is cut at the exact same amount, and that would be the 11 feet. Conveniently enough, they sell 15-foot lengths at Home Depot. So a couple feet extra, it's not that much waste. So I'm going to go ahead and try to get this wired in, but I also purchased LED light fixtures, vent fan for the bathroom, I have a ceiling fan, and obviously I'm not going to set up all this stuff till after the drywall gets put in and everything's ready. But for purposes of electrical, I need to know how big everything is, what kind of loads they require, what kind of boxes or clamps or conduit or any number of things that needs to be prepared behind the wall first before insulating and drywalling. So that's what you have to look forward to today on this video, as well as potentially the next couple videos while I'm working on the plumbing and the electrical. So stick around and I'll see you right back here on Kind Heart Homestead.
So high I'm hypnotized. What's up is down, what's left is right. Chasing stars and holding you. I can't see the end, but we'll see it through. Times don't fly too high. Be sure to keep the ground in sight. Fly forever if you keep it tight. Love the world but keep the sky on your mind.
Using the 1/4 inch per foot rule, I sloped this 2-inch PVC pipe for the laundry trap down towards the 3-inch pipe that comes out of the floor. Next, I attached a sanitary tee using a scrap of 2-inch pipe to get it at the appropriate height for the trap for our utility sink. After that, I continued the 2-inch pipe up through the double top plate into the attic space, which will be unconditioned. Later on, I'll have to put a 90-degree fitting here and get it out the sidewall somehow under the gable. I decided to install LED ceiling lights in the main room of the solar shed. The pack of lights that I bought requires each light fixture to have a small metal junction box secured to the framing members above the drywall. They do include about a 6-inch cord coming out of it, so you can reach up through the hole in the drywall, grab the cord, and then plug in your light fixture and install it into place. But until then, I'll just loop this around, keep it up away from the drywall so it doesn't get nicked when I'm cutting holes in the drywall. But essentially, I've daisy chained these together, where the circuit starts at the breaker panel, goes to the smoke detector box, which will always be live, then it feeds the light switch box, which then goes to the first, then the second, then the third box for the LED junctions, and then finally the fourth electrical box, which does not feed anything else, and it terminates there. But each of these boxes is designed to accommodate 2 pieces of Romex, one for incoming and one for outgoing. Now I'm setting up my table saw to rip 8-foot scraps of zip sheathing into 1.5-inch strips. You'll see why I need these in a minute. I've been holding off on the rough-in plumbing and electrical because I didn't have this room ready for the shower. But I'm running out of things to do, so I need to go ahead and tackle this so I can wrap up those rough-ins for the inspection. You probably can't see from there, but I have a carpenter square here, and measuring from the bottom plate, it's 13.5 inches to the center of this drain. It's meant to be 12 inches based on the manufacturer's instructions, but that's 12 inches from a finished wall. So they expect you to have drywall up before you put in the shower, which is very unusual. Typically there's a flange that gets concealed by drywall. In this situation, I'm gonna have to just fur out or shim out this wall to make it the appropriate dimension once the drywall gets put in. So at 13.5 inches, minus 1.5 inches is 12. I believe drywall is 1/2 inch, so that means I need to add an extra inch to this wall. So what I've gone ahead and done is ripped my zip sheathing because it's essentially 1/2 inch. It's 1/16 off, but I think that's fine for a buffer. I'm gonna put 2 strips of zip sheathing just on these 2 studs. And I believe they call for more studs to take into account the nailing fin along the edge. And when I install those, I can just slide them out because I'm not gonna be nailing sheathing to it, only drywall. So right where I'm sitting is where the toilet's going to be. It's going to be centered under this window facing this direction. And the shower is a corner shower over here. Generally when I do construction, I try to isolate all of the plumbing lines to interior walls. That way I can reduce the risk of freezing and potential repair and maintenance in the future. But because this toilet, the back of it lines up with this wall, I need to put a cold water line through here so I can have the toilet shut off nearby. So I drew a level line across this, roughly 6 inches from the floor, and I need to drill a bunch of holes through these studs so that the water line can be installed. 1/2-inch PEX line is very flexible, and you honestly don't need to have your holes perfectly lined up. But just because I'm a bit OCD when it comes to lines, I like to make sure I either use a level or a laser to make sure all of my holes are perfectly aligned. It also makes it a bit easier to slide the PEX through when all the holes are perfectly aligned. The only issue I ran into was here at the corner, where it's a bit too tight to get from one wall around the corner to the next with the same piece of PEX. So I ended up cutting it and putting in a 90-degree fitting in the wall. I know that fittings in the wall are a bit dangerous because when you have a leak, it's a bit harder to diagnose. But I did use a metal fitting, so there's less of a chance of it cracking during a freeze. And then I put a copper stub out on the other end. The stub out is sealed, so it should withstand the pressure test that I need to do for my inspection. And then when it comes time for me to actually attach the toilet shutoff valve, I can cut the copper and use a shark bite connector, and the copper should be plenty strong enough because I'm going to nail it into place to prevent the shark bite from pushing it into the wall. Moving back to the laundry wall, you can see here I'm using the same alignment technique that I used in the bathroom for the water line behind the toilet. I'm drilling holes the exact size as the PEX pipe, and I'm making them perfectly aligned so that the 1/2-inch piece of PEX will slide very easily through the holes. But this time I have a T-fitting in the middle that splits the water flow between the laundry hookup and our utility sink. I have this Loctite product that's designed for windows and doors. It's so minimally expansive that it's not going to warp the trim around the windows and the doors. So I'm going to go ahead and apply some of this around the bathroom window, and then I'm going to go around and use up the can wherever I can. I have a case of these nail plates. Anytime you're dealing with electrical and plumbing rough-in, you have to address the possibility that drywall screws can puncture your trades that are in the wall. So anytime you have, I think it's like 1.5 inches of wood between the face of the stud and your wiring or plumbing, you're fine. But if it's shallower, then you need to put a plate. So I'm gonna put a few on this. I haven't installed the hot water lines yet because I don't know exactly where the water heater is gonna go, but I can go back and add those later. I just wanna start these so I can remind myself that this needs to be done before I put this box into storage. I'll have to get a much larger one for the 3-inch pipe coming out of the floor. The sunlight is fading. This is my second night here this trip, a bit shorter than my usual trips. But when I was packing up for this trip, getting all the supplies and stuff into my car, I got a call from a shipping company who apparently has a truckload of my solar stuff, and they're ready to deliver it. They were so ready, in fact, that they wanted to deliver it today. But I told them that was too short of notice and I needed to coordinate some things, and I wanted them to deliver it next week. And they said they'll have to call me back Monday because they don't schedule that far in advance. Anyway, so we're anticipating meeting the truck up here sometime next week. And I wanted to go ahead and clean the space so we have access to put the batteries and the solar stuff in here. But I did get a good bit done. As you can see behind me, I got the cold water line and the drain line ready for the wet wall, which essentially is like the laundry room type wall. I also got the water line done for the toilet, and those connect to each other. And I connected them because I plan to chop out about 1 inch of pipe to put a T-fitting in once we know where the shower valve is going. I haven't even started the hot water line because I have no idea what kind of hot water heater I'm getting or where it's gonna go. My plan was to get a tankless propane hot water heater that mounts to the outside of the building. And my understanding is those use 120 volts because they're not actually heating anything with electricity. And that's good for solar. And we do have several companies around us that offer propane refills. So I'm not too concerned about that, but I do need to figure out pretty soon which hot water heater we're going to use so I know how to route the plumbing and hook it up. Anyway, if you want to see us unloading the solar equipment or doing any more of this build on our solar shed, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button, like this video, and start a discussion down in the comments for what kind of content you would like to see. So see you next time on Kind Heart Homestead. Thanks, bye.